The bank called me asking about a $523,000 mortgage I knew nothing about. My parents used my name for my sister's loan without telling me. And what I did next shook them to their core. They never thought I'd fight back because I never had before. I was sitting at my kitchen table in my little rental cottage in Oregon, sipping reheated tea, when the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. Hello, this is Grace Holloway. Miss Holloway, this is Cynthia from Magnolia Trust Bank. We're calling about your past due mortgage balance, $523,000. I laughed, politely confused. I think you've got the wrong person. I don't have a mortgage. But her voice didn't change. According to our records, you do. Taken out 3 years ago. You're listed as the primary borrower. 3 years ago? That was when Samantha was still crashing at our parents' house, talking nonstop about manifesting a big home with a backyard and an open kitchen. Still, I had no idea how this was possible. I didn't even own a car newer than 2012. The idea that someone had signed my name on a loan that massive, it didn't feel real. Until I saw the documents. The woman from the bank emailed me the contract. It came as a PDF, 37 pages long. I scrolled through, my fingers trembling. And there it was. My name, my address, my social security number, and then, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was close. The loops were practiced, the strokes careful. But not me. Not the way my hand shook on the G in Grace. Not the small hook I always left in the Y of Holloway. Someone had forged me. And I already knew who. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't an accident. It was my parents, and they'd done it to help Samantha qualify for a house. I sat completely still. Not crying. Not shaking. Just unraveling. They never even asked. They just assumed I'd carry it. Because I always had. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. Hi, sweetheart. Family dinner Sunday. Sam's bringing her famous peach pie. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't just about a mortgage. This was the moment I stopped being invisible. Growing up, I learned early what my role in the Holloway family was supposed to be. Not the golden girl. Not the center of attention. I was the background harmony to Samantha's lead melody, quiet, dependable, forgotten the moment I left the room. It wasn't always cruel. Sometimes it was worse, casually dismissive. Like when I was 8 and came home with a perfect report card. I handed it to my mother with a hopeful smile. She barely glanced at it, distracted by Samantha crying over losing a doll. Your sister's sensitive, she murmured, smoothing Sam's hair. She needs more of us. Or the time in high school when I made it to the state finals in debate. I begged Dad to come. He promised. That morning, he left a note instead, had to drive Sam to her hair appointment. Good luck, kiddo. I stood on that stage with an empty seat in the front row and clenched my trembling hands behind the podium. Then there was college. I got in on scholarships, worked nights at the library, skipped every spring break to save money. Samantha flunked out of 2 majors, racked up credit card debt, and still came home to a new car on her birthday. She's just finding herself, Mom said, while mailing me a $20 gas card with a sticky note. Sorry this month's tight, hon. Love you. I remember my 25th birthday. I'd just gotten promoted at work, my first salary job. I treated the family to dinner, a quiet Italian place downtown. The check was hefty, but I wanted them to see I was doing okay. As we left, Samantha laughed, tugging Dad's arm. You'll have to tell me how to trick someone into promoting you, Gracie. I laughed too, but it sounded hollow in my ears. That night, I opened the card they'd given me. Inside, no money, just a scribbled note. We're proud of you. You're doing fine on your own, and that's the greatest gift, right? They never asked how I was really doing. No one noticed when I started skipping family events because the loneliness there cut deeper than the silence in my small rented house. When Mom texted about Samantha's engagement, she wrote, Your sister's getting married. We're so excited. Could you help out with the bridal shower costs? Not a word about how I was doing after my breakup. Not a single check-in. That winter, I remember standing in my living room with a burst pipe under the sink, soaked to the knees, and calling Dad. He didn't answer. Later he texted, Wish I could help. We're maxed out right now, helping Samantha fix up her new guest room. They always helped her. Always. And I was always the strong one. the low-maintenance daughter. The one who made it easy to ignore. I didn't even realize how deeply it all sat in my bones, how quiet the hurt had become until I saw my name on that forged mortgage contract. That's when the shape of the past shifted. That's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the loudest. Even my memories became suspect. I remembered the birthday card from 3 years ago, the same year the mortgage was taken. It had said, "To our rock. We know you'll always keep the family steady." I thought it was praise. Now I saw it for what it was. Permission. To use me. To depend on me without asking. They didn't forge my name in a moment of desperation. They did it because they assumed I'd take it, because I always had. Every childhood memory suddenly felt different. Like the time Samantha broke Mom's favorite vase and blamed me. I was grounded for a week not because they believed her, but because they said I could handle it better. Or when I missed prom because they forgot to send in the dress deposit. They said I wasn't the type to care about dances anyway. I remembered waking up early to bake muffins before school on Mother's Day, only to come downstairs and hear Mom gush over the $20 bouquet Samantha picked up last minute. "She's thoughtful like that," Mom said, holding the flowers up to the light. So full of heart. I used to smile through those moments, telling myself it didn't matter. That I didn't need applause. But it did matter. Because every time I swallowed that pain, it told them I was fine. Every time I let it slide, I taught them they could keep sliding. And now, as I sat alone in my kitchen, mortgage documents scattered across the table, I finally understood something I'd spent decades refusing to see. They had never really seen me. They had seen a role. A support beam. A safe fallback. The sturdy older daughter who wouldn't make waves, wouldn't complain, wouldn't break. And now they had handed me over $500,000 in debt and assumed, again, that I would carry it. But they were wrong. This time, something inside me had cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like a hairline fracture in glass, spreading, deepening, unstoppable. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of breaking. I was afraid of staying whole in a house built on lies. The morning after I confirmed the mortgage wasn't a mistake, I barely slept. The cracks in my ceiling stared back at me like they had something to say. By sunrise, I was already on my laptop, tabs open like wounds, how to report identity theft, mortgage fraud by family, how to dispute forged loan documents. I called Magnolia Trust Bank again. A polite woman with a voice like winter guided me through the request for copies of the original contract. She emailed them over within minutes. When I opened the file, I stopped breathing. There it was. Page after page of financial bondage under my name. And the signature? It was almost mine. The curves were practiced, the loops just familiar enough to fool someone who didn't know better. But I knew. I knew my own hand. Every hesitation in the G, every slight drop in the Y of Holloway. This wasn't mine. It was an impersonation. A performance. A lie. The floor beneath my feet felt suddenly unstable. My fingers trembled as I zoomed into the PDF, inspecting initials in the margins, ticking off every forged signature, every page. They had used me like a name, like a tool. They hadn't even warned me. I thought of Samantha showing off her house on Instagram last year, all white marble counters and oversized chandeliers. The caption read, "Dreams do come true." I had liked the post, commented with a heart. Now it felt like swallowing glass. I stood from the kitchen table and walked slowly to the bathroom, barely registering my reflection in the mirror. My face looked distant, like I was watching myself from the outside. That evening, I sat down and began gathering everything, every document that tied me to them. Old shared bank statements, co-signed insurance forms, emails where they borrowed my credit for just this once. Even birthday cards signed with things like, "You're the responsible one. We love you for it." I placed them in a neat stack and tied them with a ribbon. It felt ceremonial, like preparing evidence for a trial. And in many ways I was. But what hit the hardest wasn't the forgery. It was what happened next. That Sunday, I went to family dinner. Not because I wanted peace, but because I needed clarity. The house looked the same, two-story, white shutters, a patchy lawn Dad always promised to fix. I stood on the porch for a moment, heart pounding behind my ribs like a warning. Then I knocked. Mom opened the door, smiling like we hadn't spoken in weeks. "Gracie, you're early." She pulled me into a hug that smelled of lemon cleaner and perfume. Inside, the scene was postcard perfect. Pot roast. Warm light. Dad watching a football game. Samantha curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone like royalty. I waited through dinner. Listened to Samantha complain about HOA regulations and lawn care. Laughed politely at Mom's jokes. Nodded as Dad offered commentary on a team he didn't really follow. I studied them like strangers. When the dishes were cleared, I leaned forward and spoke. Does anyone know anything about a mortgage with my name on it? The room went quiet. Utterly, achingly quiet. Even the wall clock ticking seemed too loud. Samantha was the first to twitch, pulling down her sleeves, adjusting her posture. Mom's smile faltered. Dad cleared his throat. I'm just trying to understand, I said, voice low. Calm. Mom reached across the table, as if this was about a misunderstanding over leftovers. Grace, it's not a big deal. Samantha needed help qualifying. You weren't using your credit anyway. You have such good standing, Samantha added quickly, her tone defensive. It's not like you're paying anything. It's just paperwork. Just paperwork. I nodded slowly. Thanks for explaining. They all exhaled. They thought it was over. They thought that was enough. But something inside me had snapped quietly, a thread too taut, finally giving way. And what scared me most wasn't their actions. It was that none of them thought they were wrong. They believed I should be grateful to carry their debt. That being useful was love. As I left that night, my mother kissed my cheek. Don't be dramatic about this, okay? Family sticks together. I smiled. But it wasn't warmth. It was the beginning of a storm. That drive home was the loneliest journey I've ever taken. My hands gripped the wheel like it might fly away. Their words echoed in my head like ghosts. Just paperwork. It's not a big deal. You weren't using it anyway. No apologies. No guilt. Just expectations. They had handed me over to the wolves and expected me to smile as they locked the gate behind me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just hurt. I was awake. And when I finally pulled into my driveway and shut off the engine, I knew. Whatever came next, I wouldn't be silent anymore. The silence after that Sunday dinner wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, dense, like walking through fog with weights tied to my ankles. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But every step I took through my small house felt like I was dragging a ghost behind me. That night, I sat on the floor beside my bed, surrounded by the paperwork I'd collected. Old bank statements. Credit reports. Scanned copies of my signature, real ones to compare. Every envelope felt like a betrayal with a return address. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call and demand why. But a voice inside whispered. They already told you why. Because they could. At 3 a.m., I was still awake. The lamp beside me cast long shadows on the carpet. I stared at the cracks in the ceiling again, the ones I'd always meant to fix. They reminded me of myself, small fractures that had gone ignored for years, now threatening to split open. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time I felt truly seen, truly valued. Not for being the fixer, the strong one, the responsible fallback, but for simply existing. I couldn't. What tore at me most wasn't the mortgage. It was how casual they had been. How unbothered. It's not like you're paying anything. Just paperwork. Just you. I thought about calling Mom the next morning. Maybe there was still a way to undo this without blowing up everything. But even as I reached for my phone, my stomach turned. I wasn't calling to fix it. I was calling because I was still stuck in that role. The peacemaker, the smoother of waters, the emotional janitor cleaning up messes she never made. I put the phone down. Instead, I brewed a pot of coffee and wrote in a notebook for the first time in months. I wrote everything, the facts, the feelings, the fears. It felt like vomiting up poison. I remembered how Samantha once lost her job and moved in with our parents. Mom redecorated the guest room for her. But new curtains painted the walls soft lavender. When I got laid off for a few weeks during COVID, I asked if I could stay over just a month while job hunting. Mom had said, "It's not a good time, Grace. You're so independent. I think it's best you keep that up." I had smiled, told her I understood. Slept in my car for a week until I could get a loan approved for rent. That memory broke me. I put my head in my hands and let the tears come, not loud, not theatrical. Just quiet, private tears that tasted like metal and shame. By noon, I was exhausted. But something had shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was done. Done trying to earn space in a family that had already spent me. Done pretending that their love was anything more than convenience draped in guilt. I spent the next 2 days reading every blog, every article on mortgage fraud, legal rights, identity protection. I posted anonymously in forums. I took notes. I built a battle plan, not for revenge, but for escape. I found a name, Mr. Reed, a real estate attorney recommended by a woman in an online support group. Her story was eerily similar. He helped her. Quietly, thoroughly. I made an appointment. The morning of the meeting, I dressed simply: jeans, navy sweater, no makeup. I didn't want to impress anyone. I wanted to be taken seriously. The cafe where we met was tucked away beside an old train station, half forgotten by the town. I chose it deliberately. The booths were worn, the air smelled of cinnamon and burned coffee. A place where broken things could sit without question. Mr. Reed arrived on time. Gray suit. Wire-frame glasses. No nonsense. I slid the folder across the table. He didn't speak much as he read. Just flipped page after page with the quiet focus of someone who'd seen too much. When he finally looked up, his voice was low. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Ms. Holloway. It's fraud. Identity theft. Criminal." Hearing those words aloud felt like being slapped and hugged at the same time. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was, finally, being believed. I asked him what I needed to do. And for the next 2 hours, he told me. File a police report. Notify the bank in writing. Submit dispute paperwork. Document everything. Be prepared for it to get ugly. Be prepared to lose your family. I nodded. I had already lost them. They just didn't know it yet. That night, I didn't sleep again. But it wasn't the helpless exhaustion anymore. It was clarity. The kind that comes when you finally accept that something you love won't change, and you stop begging it to. I thought about the little girl version of me, the one who baked muffins for Mother's Day, who waited by the window during school plays hoping they'd show up. I whispered to her that we were done waiting now. I filed the report the next morning. The officer was kind but surprised. "You sure you want to do this? They're your family." "I'm sure," I said. As he typed up the paperwork, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. But this time, I wasn't terrified of the fall. I was terrified of staying chained to the rocks. I mailed the bank dispute the same day, certified, tracked. No more invisible. And then, I waited. I didn't tell them. I didn't warn them. I just watched the days tick by like a silent countdown. When Mom showed up at my door 4 days later, panicked, angry, I didn't let her inside. She demanded answers. "How could you do this to us?" I didn't flinch. "You did this to me 3 years ago." She screamed, cried, pleaded, accused. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match her energy. I just said, "Family doesn't steal. Family asks." Then I closed the door. It was the softest sound I'd ever made. And somehow it was louder than anything I'd ever said. After I closed the door on my mother, something shifted in the air. It wasn't dramatic. No thunder cracked overhead. No cinematic music swelled. Just stillness. And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Control. Not over them, I'd never had that. But over myself. That same evening, I sat at my desk with a fresh notebook. I labeled the front. Operation Liberation. It was a quiet kind of rebellion. No fire, no fury, just form filling, case numbers, timelines. I called the credit bureaus next. Placed fraud alerts on all my accounts. Ordered full credit reports and flagged every account they'd opened in my name. Some I knew, some I didn't. The deeper I dug, the more I realized. This hadn't been a single betrayal. It was a system. One I'd been born into. For weeks, I worked in silence. While they called, texted, sent relatives to plead with me, I didn't respond. I documented everything. Kept records of voicemails, screenshots of guilt-laced messages. "Sam didn't mean any harm. She's going through a lot. Don't destroy the family over one mistake. We thought you wouldn't mind. You've always been the strong one." That phrase again. The strong one. A label they'd used to excuse using me until I had nothing left to give. So I stopped giving. I stayed quiet, but not still. Mr. Reed and I filed the paperwork to legally remove my name from the mortgage. We gathered the forensic handwriting analysis, confirmed my real signature versus the forged one. I gave a formal deposition over Zoom, calm, collected, composed. The bank responded in less than 10 days. They had suspended the loan. A full investigation had begun. If confirmed fraudulent, the loan would default, meaning Samantha would lose the house. The debt would come for her, not me. I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast anything. I simply made tea and sat by the window, watching the evenings settle over the street. It was the same street I'd walked alone after birthday dinners no one remembered. The same sidewalk I'd paced, wondering if I was too sensitive, too cold, too distant. Now it felt like mine again. About a month later, I got a letter in the mail. An apology from the bank. Formal, carefully worded. But the last line stood out. We acknowledge that this account was created using falsified documents. Your name will be cleared from any associated liability. I ran my finger over that sentence like it was a scar I'd finally stopped picking. But the real twist? It wasn't legal. It was emotional. It was the morning I realized. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to see Samantha evicted or my parents humiliated. I just didn't want them near me anymore. The clarity wasn't vengeful. It was peaceful. I didn't owe them anger. I didn't owe them closure. And I certainly didn't owe them access to the woman I was becoming. Instead of spending my evenings untangling debt, I started filling them with softness. Long walks in the hills. Pottery classes on Saturday mornings. Books I'd bought years ago and never opened. Silence, not the punishing kind, but the restorative kind. The kind where I could hear myself again. I repainted my living room. Burnt sage and soft linen. I donated old clothes, especially the ones I used to wear to family dinners, hoping someone would say I looked nice. I hosted no one. I answered to no one. One day, I came across an old photo of the four of us at Samantha's high school graduation. She stood in the center, bouquet in hand. I stood slightly behind her, cropped by the frame. No one had noticed then. But I did now. I placed the photo in a box marked archive and put it in the back of my closet. Some things deserve to be buried, not in hatred, but in acceptance. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, they came back. Not with lawyers. Not with threats. But with wilted eyes and hands that trembled. They waited outside my building. Just like I used to wait for them. Samantha spoke first, voice thin and trembling. I messed up. I didn't think it'd go this far. I thought you'd understand. My father stepped forward. You didn't have to involve the police. We could have fixed this as a family. And my mother, always the orchestrator, whispered. You're our daughter. We love you. Please, just come back. But love doesn't look like debt. Love doesn't forge your name and call it support. Love doesn't wait until the consequences show up to say sorry. I looked at them, really looked, and saw not villains, but small people who had spent a lifetime confusing obligation with affection. I said, I hope someday you learn what family really means. But it's not this. Samantha reached out, maybe hoping for a hug, a crack in my voice, a plea to heal. But there was nothing left to give. I turned, walked past them, carried my groceries upstairs without once looking back. And when I closed my door, no slam, no ceremony, I smiled. Because this was my twist. Not explosive. Not loud. Just final. Some behind small cloud P10 6, KT that and N Cheyenne plus GIHI 1002. The weeks that followed were quiet. Not empty, not hollow. Just still. No more surprise visits. No more guilt-drenched texts. No more phone calls from a mother trying to frame betrayal as a misunderstanding. They stopped. Or maybe I just stopped answering. And in that space, life began to bloom, gently, cautiously. I started walking every morning. Just 10 minutes at first, then longer. My town wasn't grand, a handful of bakeries, bookstores, old lampposts that flickered too early, but it was mine. I passed the same shopkeepers, the same peeling murals, and they began to feel like anchors in a world I was rebuilding. I picked up pottery again, something I hadn't done since college. The clay felt cold and solid in my hands like grief. But the more I worked it, the softer it became. The more I shaped it, the more it began to resemble something whole. Some nights I'd stare at a half-finished bowl and think, this is what healing looks like. Not sudden. Not perfect. Just progress. One Saturday morning, I woke up early and drove to a small farmer's market just outside town. I walked alone, weaving between flower stands and honey jars and homemade candles. A woman selling tea smiled and asked if I wanted to try a lavender blend. I took a sip. It tasted like peace. That night, I brewed it in my little kitchen, sat on the balcony wrapped in a soft blanket, and watched the streetlights blink on one by one. The wind rustled through the trees. A car door slammed somewhere far off. But inside me? Silence. The good kind. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone to say sorry. I wasn't replaying arguments or imagining what I should have said. I wasn't building a case in my head, preparing for the next attack. I was just here. Me. Whole. Quietly untouchable. The legal process didn't end overnight. It dragged, as all systems do. There were emails from Mr. Reed, court notices, documents to sign. But none of it felt heavy anymore. Because now I understood. This wasn't about punishing them. It was about protecting me. I wasn't chasing justice. I was building distance. A few months after the confrontation outside my apartment, I received a final notice from the bank. Loan officially transferred from your name. Case closed. File archived. There were no fireworks, no dramatic phone calls. Just a finality, clean and clinical, like the quiet after a deep breath. One afternoon, I cleaned out the closet. At the back was a box labeled old family stuff. I opened it slowly, hands brushing across faded photographs, cards, scribbled birthday notes. One by one, I laid them out on the floor. A younger version of me smiled in every picture, always slightly behind Samantha, always a step to the side. The invisible girl. The sturdy girl. The girl who didn't need much. I gathered the photos, slid them into a new folder, and wrote across the front. Past. Not present. I didn't throw them away. I didn't need to. Some good memories still lived in there: summer picnics, Christmas lights, the way Dad used to hum Sinatra while washing dishes. But now, they belong to a different chapter. That evening, as the sun melted behind the trees, I lit a candle in the living room. Soft music played in the background. The scent of cinnamon and orange drifted through the air. I wasn't celebrating. I was honoring something. The version of me who finally said no. The version of me who walked away. Not in rage, but in knowing. The final twist in this story wasn't legal or emotional. It was existential. They expected me to stay, to forgive quietly, to carry the weight, again, just a little longer. They thought if they waited long enough, I'd circle back. That love would override dignity. That blood would demand loyalty. But what they never understood was this. Sometimes walking away is the most loyal thing you can do to yourself. And now, when I pass by families in the park, mothers calling out to daughters, sisters laughing over brunch, I don't feel envy. I feel clarity. Not everyone gets the family they deserve. But everyone deserves to choose peace. 1 year after I filed the police report, I stood in my kitchen holding a small envelope. No return address. Inside was a card. Simple. Blank. But in Samantha's handwriting. I'm sorry. I hope you're happy. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just placed it inside the back of my journal and whispered, I am. These days, I spend my Sundays reading by the window. I bake muffins when I want to. I call people who show up for me, not just expect me to. I speak kindly to myself. I listen to the quiet and let it speak back. I am no longer the strong one. I am the free one. And I've learned something along the way, something I hope stays with me forever. Sometimes the loudest thing you'll ever say is nothing at all. Have you ever realized that silence was your loudest answer? What was the moment you finally chose yourself, even if it meant walking alone? Tell me your story. I'm listening.